People think law firms have the money, in-house is not. Money follows the passion.
How do good lawyers become great general counsels?
One thing I've never said is, oh, that's my job, that's not my job. My job today is to make Magic Leap successful. That's my job. And so if I can help make Magic Leap successful, it's all part of my job. You know, when there was no more real estate lawyer at Motorola, all of a sudden I was the real estate lawyer. When there was no more M&A lawyer, I was the M&A lawyer, right? And so, just being able to step up and say, I can do that. Mistakes have I made in the past without wanting to admit to malpractice? No, I'm kidding.
And how should general counsels handle conflict at work?
Nothing is an absolute no unless someone's going to end up in a jumpsuit, right? Then it's a no.
What keeps you up in the night when it comes to AI, Tarek?
Nothing really. I mean, I love it. There are way more things on my team's desk than we have time to get done. Like, so much more. I don't fear job replacement at all. If there was something I fear, is that we're going to all be so busy and swamped that we're just not going to be able to keep up anymore. Have you committed malpractice yet?
Tarek Sultani, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Tarek, I've seen how your career has moved from law firms to in-house in Google, and now you are a chief legal officer at Magic Leap. And you have seen a lot in this journey of last couple of decades. Also being a professor, being a member in the tech TC community as well. You've seen a lot in your career. So we want to understand, how do good lawyers become great general counsels?
How do good lawyers become great general counsels? And it's such a terrific question, and I think it's often overlooked because there's the skills of becoming a good lawyer, right? And those are some of those get taught in law school, and some of them don't. Like we find that particularly law school prepares you for a career path in litigation and things like that, which can make you an excellent lawyer. But on a certain side, some of the commercial transactional stuff, law schools don't do as good a job, but you become excellent if you go to a good firm and you can get some great training. And then a lot of lawyers, they end up going in-house, and they can still be excellent lawyers. But I find there's a big distinction between those that sort of punch in and do the job, and those who sort of really partner strongly with the business. So that's going to be the first part of the answer, is to make the path. It's actually, for me, in my journey, it was less important about thinking like, I want to be a general counsel and I want to do this, and more about just doing great work and partnering well with the business. And when you start doing that great work and you start building the relationships with the business, they come back to you, and then you become a trusted advisor. So I'd encourage, even the most junior in-house counsel to really think of themselves as kind of a quasi-general counsel, because one thing I've never said is, oh, that's my job, that's not my job. And so from my view, my job today is to make Magic Leap successful. That's my job. And so if I can help make Magic Leap successful, then it's all part of my job. Now, that doesn't mean I'm the best suited person to do every particular task. And maybe I'll say this person might be better suited to do that task. But if I'm the best available person for doing something, whether it's even if it's I did a financial model yesterday, so if I'm building, why is the CLO building a financial model? Because I was the best suited person to build that particular model. And so that's always been the view. And I think how you can become a great general counsel is you build those trusted relationships, you step outside your comfort zone, you take on work in areas that are non-traditional and non-native, and stretch you and grow you, and you do a great job with that. And once you build that trust, those stakeholders, they come back to you, and they come back to you not just as, oh, you're the person who did the contract with them, or you're the person who solved the privacy issue with them, whatever your core role is, they start to come back to you for other questions and other help. And while you should certainly, work with your teammates, and your teammates should all be collaborating, you start to learn a familiarity with a whole bunch of different places. Sometimes you'll also see, different part of the answer is sometimes you'll also, there's attrition, people move on, there's reductions in force sometimes, unfortunately. And then there's a need for someone to step up. So, this has happened to me multiple times in my career, when there was no more real estate lawyer at Motorola, all of a sudden I was the real estate lawyer. When there was no more M&A lawyer, I was the M&A lawyer, right? And so, uh, the, just being able to step up and say, I can do that. When I went to Google, I had a lot of experience. So, this was, sorry, after I was at Google Fiber, but when I was in, or even when I was within Google Fiber, they needed someone to do data centers and co-location and all that stuff. Never done it in my life. That's okay. I'll learn it. Um, when I went to the hardware, oh, hardware, you did Motorola, you did supply chain. Yes, of course. I'd never done contract manufacturing. All of a sudden, I was building the contract manufacturing practice. It's always step into that discomfort, step into that area where you say, I don't know it, but I want to know it. And so eventually, when I was interviewing for my first general counsel job, the CEOs, they grilled me, as co-CEOs, and they grilled me on all these different areas and said, how would you tackle this problem? How would you tackle that problem? And I realized, wait a minute, I know the answers to these questions because over the years I've done these things. Just by stepping out of that comfort zone and taking on these additional projects, by building trusted relationships with the business who taught me what I needed to know to be able to speak articulately as a strategic advisor to these CEOs about the issues that they were facing. And so even though it was an entirely new industry for me at the time, it's the commercial real estate industry, which I had no experience in, but I knew how to solve the problems that they were concerned about. And so that's the real key is stepping out of the comfort zone, learning how to solve problems, having a can-do attitude, and partnering with the business.
Brilliant. Brilliant answer, Tarek. Now, a big piece of it is also attitude. Let's say stepping out of comfort zone requires an attitude to step out of comfort zone. You taking up new roles in which are uncomfortable, as finance. So, for example, in your case, also I saw you also being the corporate secretary of Magic Leap. You also taking up business development head as well. I saw the title as well on LinkedIn. A major portion of it is attitude to do more, give more, share more, have more, be more, so that you can add more value to your company. Attitude is not taught in the universities, in law schools. How do you get that?
So I would also start also by saying that for people who want to really specialize and go really deep in an area, there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a brilliant career path as well. It's not the path of a general counsel. Not saying that you can't become a general counsel if you take that path. You can, but it's not the traditional path of a general counsel. The whole point of being a general counsel is to counsel generally, right? And so we get the experts to go deep when we need to go even deeper, and then we bring it up to a level of granularity where we can communicate with our CEO and the rest of the C-suite. So to answer the question about attitude, I think it's really, for me, was about finding the passion in what it is that I wanted to do. And I was very lucky. I had a period of time in between. I always say this now, like if you have a period of time where you actually have nothing you have to do, the things that you naturally gravitate towards are the things where you're actually going to probably be truly interested, truly passionate about, and it's probably closer to your purpose. There's those like ikigai concentric circles, and you get to the ikigai. Um, but but for me, it's like it was almost the opposite of that. Rather than searching for what that was, it was the absence of knowing, having to do things that clarified that path for me. And so I was very lucky in between my first and second firm jobs. Sullivan Cromwell and Staten. I moved back to the U.S. I had 3 months in between the two jobs, and my wife was pregnant with our firstborn, and so I was able to spend a considerable amount of time with her. And during that time period, I only did a few things. I doted on my pregnant wife. I studied languages. I went to the gym a lot, and this was the big one for me in the sort of the epiphany moment. Although the language things as well, we'll get to that. Um, but the big epiphany for me was that I started reading a lot of tech blogs and tech journals and geeking out and building up hardware projects, and like just started goofing around coding and doing all these things that I would never otherwise do as a lawyer. And all of a sudden that for me was like, wow, okay, that's it. And actually for my wife, it was similar. She started baking. And then when our son was born, even though she would sacrifice sleep to make confections and whatnot, and she's now a professional chocolatier, pastry chef, and that does those things. She found her passion through this sort of period of time where we were both just not working. Um, I'm not encouraging people who, to just not work, but I do think if you can find the space and take a short career break, it can be very elucidating. And so, getting back to the languages thing as well, I mean, I found that I had a passion for other cultures and meeting with people and, learning that space as well. And so sort of like, how do I marry this legal career that I really enjoy, plus technology, plus the people and the cultures? And so doing the international negotiations in the tech industry became like that was a niche that I kind of was able to carve for myself by having that passion. So that I think, getting back to the original question of, sort of how do you get the attitude? I think we all have it. It's just a question of what we're passionate about. If you find it, I can tell you my attitude was completely different in private practice, with no offense to those who do private practice. But for me, it was square peg and round hole. And I was miserable going to work every day. I dreaded it. I was ready to quit the law, and I don't care if I just spent all this money and time in law school. Like, this was the biggest mistake of my life, right? It was a totally different thing because I just didn't have passion for what it was. And again, I very much respect in my second firm. I actually really enjoyed my time at Scannon. I thought the partners were terrific. They were very kind and very thoughtful, and not at all what you hear in the horror stories and whatnot. But it just ultimately for me, I knew it wasn't my passion. And so when I had the opportunity to go in house at Motorola, it was post Google acquisition. I'm like, yes. Yep. Yes to that. Like, it was so exciting. Took a massive pay cut, but I'd never worked harder. I worked way harder than I even did in private practice. But I loved what I was doing. And it's that passion that allows you to really grow and get the right attitude. So I don't think you have to teach attitude. I think you have to find the right fit.
It's brilliant, beautiful. Tariq, you mentioned a very important point here of the private practice versus in-house roles. Um, there are two paths for a lawyer, generally speaking. A third path, let's say, is entrepreneurship. Generally speaking, a lawyer is, let's say, trying to become a partner in a law firm or trying to become a general counsel in-house. And there's a massive difference, as you said, this you were a lawyer who wanted to quit law, and because you were in private practice, it was not sinking in very well for you. However, you found your passion and purpose in in-house. How can a lawyer choose a path between becoming a law firm partner versus becoming a general counsel? How can a young lawyer find their path?
Yeah, and despite what I said about it not being a good fit for me, I do think there is something excellent about spending quality time in a good law firm, particularly at the outset of your career. Something one of my old bosses and mentors used to say is, you can't you can't teach perfect to an in-house lawyer. Like, and it's not because they're not smart enough or whatnot, but it's because of the pace. Uh, People who are outside counsel moving in are regularly shocked by the pace. All of a sudden, I was going from doing 1 to 2 very big and time-consuming deals to doing, like, 30 deals. And if I treated those 30 deals like I treated those 1 or 2 deals, I was dead in the water, right? I mean, there was just no surviving it. So you have to very quickly learn to move fast, and then you have to learn the Pareto. It's like, what 20% of the work gets 80% of the risk covered? Like, and what 20% mistakes can you make in order, but still get it 80% right. That's the like, you have to be comfortable living and thriving in that ambiguity. Like, I'm not gonna get to 100%. I'm not even gonna get to 90. If I'm lucky, I get to 80. And you have to be comfortable with that. Now, the problem is, if you've never learned how to be perfect, it's really hard to know what that 80% is. And it's also really hard to know when you need to slow down and do it. So every so often, I will be doing something that's kind of bet the company. And if you're dealing with something that massive and major, then you do need to slow down and you do need to get it perfect. You do need to get to your 99 or your 100%. And you can't rely on outside counsel to do that for you because you're the one who knows the business the best. Now, you can get support from them, but you still need to be able to be on top of reviewing and understanding that it's truly 100%. Only you can understand that as the in-house counsel. And so that's the piece where I would say the career paths are not mutually exclusive. If I was to advise a younger attorney trying to decide, do I go in-house or do I go to a firm? I would say you can do both. But I would start, if you can, at a premium law firm because you will learn how to be perfect. You will learn the skills you need, and then you can go in-house and learn to relax them.
Mm. Relax them. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a big piece. Yes, absolutely. And in your career, you have worked in law firms, you worked in-house, you worked in large corporations like Google, and now you're working in a corporation like Magic Leap. How do you, if you have to, let's say, give an advice to your younger self, the mistakes that you have made in the past, what mistakes were those, and what advice would you give to your younger self?
Now, what mistakes have I made in the past without wanting to admit to malpractice? No, I'm kidding. Actually, that was like my first week at Solcrom. This partner, I'd actually interned in their high school, believe it or not. And this partner, who I had remembered from my high school years and was super friendly with me. He walks by and he goes, "Have you committed malpractice yet?" And I go, "Oh, well, it's welcome. I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, why am I, it's onto me." But totally psyching me out and having a good laugh. Um, so I I think you know, it's mistakes are gonna be made. This is also what my first general counsel said to me was, and I say it to my team all the time now, I'd much rather you get speeding tickets than parking fines. So it's like acknowledgement that like we have to go fast and mistakes are going to be made. Um, and so he pulled me aside my first day of work and spent an hour with me, which I thought was terrifically generous because again, this was my first day in house, and I was way many layers below him at the time. And that was the main takeaway was like, you're gonna make a lot of mistakes, and that's okay. Just own those mistakes, always have a well-reasoned, response for why you did what you did, but otherwise, it's okay to make mistakes. If there's no he would also say, if there was no risk, then there would be no business. So you have to be willing to take risk. It's not about getting rid of all the risk. It's about knowing what the risk is, doing your best to be able to quantify it, being able to advise upon it, and then letting the right stakeholders, which sometimes you, but oftentimes is a business stakeholder, make the right decision. Letting them make the best decision on the basis of that fulsome strategic advice you're giving them.
And in the company, when you're giving advice, let's say to the C-suite in your company, to the CEO and other people, and in their disagreement, how do you handle conflict at work? How should journal counsels handle conflict at work?
Mm, yeah, and so I'm assuming you mean conflict between other executives, not necessarily conflict with the general counsel, or all.
No, between your advice, you are saying X, but they're saying
Oh,
we'll do Y.
that different question. Got it. So again, right, I think this is where the role of, corporate secretary comes in handy, right? Because you learn very quickly what the governance standards are. I always like to say nothing is a no, is an absolute no, unless someone's going to end up in a jumpsuit, right? Then it's a no. But it's either yes and or yes but, and yes and looks like here's what I would also do in addition to this to really optimize what you're suggesting. Yes, but is yet, you know, and I have actually said this before and probably shouldn't, but it's a yes, but that would be the stupidest thing I've ever seen anyone do. But it's probably more likely to be something like, yes, but you will probably lose $2 million. Yes, but the deal's only worth 200K. Why would we do that? I don't know. It's your decision. Like, you actually have the authority to make this call, but you will lose $2 million. What do you mean? Okay, let me show you. Right. So that's how you handle it. You don't, no, I'm not going to let you do this. And you create a power struggle. It's just like when I'm dealing with my kids. If I tell my son, no, he's a teenager, he's going to like flip through the roof and find ways to fight. But if you can find ways to just I'm not saying like our clients are teenagers, but sometimes they are. But if you can find if you can find a way to just show them, again, I'm very big on quantifying, and that's I know a foreign language for a lot of attorneys, but I had the good fortune of doing my CFA charter before law school and worked in banking and consulting. And, I like to say I'm a lawyer who runs towards numbers. I like spreadsheets. I like making spreadsheets. I like valuing things. And so oftentimes I can actually go and if I can have the data, I can actually take the risk and I can actually quantify it. And I can say, this is what the decision, here's your expected value model. Here's why you will lose $2 million. Right? And so if you can get to that level of granularity, and you can't always, and particularly when you're moving fast, you can't, but if you can get to that level of granularity, then you're taking the emotion out of it. You're making a pure financial and data-driven decision.
You're also a professor in the Chicago Law School. Are you also kind of a professor role in as a GC role as well?
Um, am I the professorial GC? I don't think, I think in both of my I'm probably the very relaxed, professor, and I guess you'd have to ask my students. But, I yes and no, and so I'll give, first, I do think, I'm less academic, and I try and be as practical and grounded in the advice that I give. I try and bring it back to the pragmatics of the business and the true economics of the business rather than from like a theoretical academic standpoint. So in that sense, I'm less professorial. In other ways, I am more professorial because I'll often uh, go back down to sort of theory of why we do things. Like if we're doing a contract negotiation and we're arguing over how it should be, I can go back and say, well, here's what the black letter law would be. Here is why why we do it differently in this country, which is, I treat cross-border transactions. And so like here's why this should actually read this way and why it makes sense for the context of our deal. So I can pull out academic theory when it's needed. But I generally err on the side of being, more pragmatic, numbers driven, data driven. Um, so yeah, I think overall, having sort of that holistic view can only be helpful. And I do very much enjoy teaching, but my classes also tend to be more pragmatic and case study and driven by real world rather than sort of theory and academics.
Do you think the role of a general counsel is also a role of a professor where general counsel has to teach to his fellow C-suite that, this is how it is, and it's like more of a guide role than more of a GC role?
So I do believe that my favorite part of the role is the strategic advisory piece, right?
Which is teaching? Yeah.
That's right, which is similar to teaching. So I would say those that in that way it is similar. Um, Giving that sort of strategic advisory is similar to the teaching piece. And so I think that yes, from that perspective, yes, I would say it's similar. It is the favorite part of the job. I've been known to do sort of larger trainings. I started at Google doing sort of a very fun communicating with care training, and one of the Google execs uh, came up to me afterwards and said that was the most horrifying training I've ever been a part of. And she said, I thought it was going to be like a very touchy feely communicating with care, how we don't hurt each other's feelings. And she's like, and you absolutely terrified me with all this. Like, now I will never want to put anything in email again because 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 now I'm so scared of everything you just told me. And so, it was very much the other kind of communicating with care and making sure you don't get in trouble. But it was sort of academic case studies and thing as well. So there is that level of that. The other thing is, as I said before, I think everything is always our job, and I think there's ways to step out of the traditional lawyer role and become, more of a teacher, and so or a leader or whatnot. So I, you know, built the patent program at JLL Technologies, and led innovation. And you're like, well, why is the lawyer leading innovation? Well, because why not? If innovation is everybody's job. And one of our big values at JLLT was grow yourself, and that was the one that really spoke to me. So I used to do an annual book challenge where, a book and podcast challenge, and people could, essentially listen to podcasts or read books or, ebooks or audiobooks, whatever it is that they wanted to, but it was just with the spirit of growing yourself. And, for getting certain parts of the challenge, we'd share information. There was book clubs, there was a newsletter that we'd put out each week. And at the end, people would get, cool swag and all sorts of stuff. So it's just like, that was just another sort of so in that sense, yeah, professorial, because I always want people to grow themselves. I want them to learn, and I wanted to sort of help spearhead those efforts.
Brilliant, brilliant. I also noticed one more thing, Tarek, on your profile is that you're also taking, as you mentioned, taking multiple roles in the organization. Apart from being a GC, you're also corporate secretary, you're also taking care of business development. Tell us about that. And I also see it becoming a trend in the US where general counsels are becoming chief administrative officer, chief people officer, uh, and chief human resource officer as well. So, is that a trend in the US where GCs are taking more roles, and why?
So I think it's interesting that you note that, and I think that's terrific that you're noting that. I guess I'll step back to what the old world was. I think if you look back at the data from, the 1970s, the majority, I wouldn't say the majority, but actually it might have even been the majority. I don't have the stat in front of me, but a large proportion of CEOs actually had a JD. And so that was the degree that's, sort of, and then the MBA became super popular, and somehow general counsels became sort of the main career path for if you had a JD. As we know, people with JDs, yes, with a JD, you're not studying this multidisciplinary approach that you are under an MBA, but you are learning a ton of different uh, ways of thinking and solving problems, which is really the core skill of what a CEO or other, chief executive has to deal with. It's whatever the most challenging problems in their discipline is. And so I think it's natural that GCs, now that it's that's the primary career path, it's natural we would want to branch out. And I think particularly given what the general counsel is, as we said, someone who counsels generally, I think, I think it's natural that those individuals would learn about a whole bunch of disciplines in the course of their learning of their career, and then want to sort of branch into some of those other areas. So, I've even seen um, GCs who also run ops, procurement. That's becoming common. Obviously, ethics and compliance, chief compliance officer, but even sometimes data. And my executive coach was a 4-time public CLO. Um, Hi, Mark. We all love Mark. But if but on top of that, his last job was as CTO of a Fortune 500 company. And uh, he requires me to send him a new calendar invite every time because he is not the most tech savvy, but he'll be the first to admit that. And he'll tell the story way better than I will. But essentially the CEO came to him and said, you know, I need you to be CTO. And he was like, I don't know anything about tech, and he goes, yes, but you know everything about leadership. And so I think that's the key job that differentiates. I mean, the
Mm,
key skill that differentiates at this level. It's actually less about what do you know from a legal perspective, but more about how can you lead, how can you problem solve, and that's why we're seeing more and more adjacencies. So for me specifically, um, corporate secretary is something that I'd always wanted to be a part of, and that's a lot of the one big thing that attracted me to the Magic Leap role was the ability to become corporate secretary as well and get that opportunity to serve in that function. And I am very lucky that that our investors, the Saudi PIF, so our chairman is His Excellency Yasser Ramayan. And so, it's a world-class board, and I'm really honored and privileged to be able to be their corporate secretary. Um, the other two roles that I have, corporate and business development, are sort of the outgrowth of, part of Magic Leap's journey was that it was an enterprise company. Magic Leap 2 was an enterprise product and it had an enterprise sales team. But when we pivoted towards building third-party products and solutions and services rather than first-party devices, then that made a different need. And so uh, in the restructuring, we no longer had a sales department because we didn't need one, and we needed to build a business development arm. And so, given that I was already closest to some of the large partnership deals that we've been doing, it made natural sense for me to take that on board. And similar in the corporate development side, because I'm already functioning as corporate secretary and working on the large strategic transactions from that angle, it made sense for me to also do it. And I, of course, have the large M&A experience and as well as the large commercial deal experience to help guide Magic Leaps. It's an honor they put that trust in me. And those teams are still very small. In fact, both teams are the same. It's just one beleaguered CLO and one VP who works on the team, but we are growing. We actually have an active role posted right now. So if anyone's interested is listening, feel free to apply. It's a business development associate who will report to our VP business and corporate development, which is Aaron Crum, who's just a phenomenal guy.
Brilliant. A lot of lessons here, a lot of questions here from the last answer you gave. 2 or 3 biggest takeaways on leadership.
2 or 3 biggest takeaways on leadership. I'm trying to, because my gut is to go back to the things we've already talked about because those are in my normal canon. So I'm going to try and think if there's other sort of pearls or nuggets there. I think this one's a little cliche, but it's so true. Is that try and hire really smart, talented people who don't want or need a lot of handholding. I mean, you
How do you attract them? How do you attract them?
How do you attract them? Well, I guess first I would say like I do love to mentor, and that's I want to separate that because I think having the ability to mentor smart, talented people is great. How do you attract them? I don't unfortunately have the same ability to offer the same compensation, say that Google or Meta is able to offer. But I think how you can attract them is by it's the same. This is where it's the same as what I was saying before, is you find people who have that passion, who have that, and you sell them on the opportunity. And you show them what the opportunity looks like in terms of how it can grow their career. So typically you're going to find that it does correlate with ambitious people. And I've had people who've, gone on from my teams to take on much larger and better roles. And I always congratulate them and wish them the best, right? I'm here to support them first and foremost. And I think having that mindset of, yes, we want to do what's best by the company, but we also want to do what's best by our people and want them to have that. So, the idea is have them join, help them grow and go to the next level, show them the opportunity that's waiting for them. And then just trust that the relationship will take care of itself. I mean, I do think reputation matters too. I'm not saying I have a great one, but I think, there's enough people who can speak to what it's like to be on my team. And, and I would never shy away from that. I would always welcome anybody to speak to anybody who's ever worked for me in the past, those who enjoyed working with me and those who didn't. And because it's going to paint the same picture of what kind of manager I am. I'm not going to be a perfect fit for everybody. But for some people, they're going to say, wow, he was great. He let me do X, Y, and Z. And other people are going to say, oh, he was terrible. He, really did this and that and that. Right. And that's fine. But I think somewhere in those stories, the people who would naturally gel towards me, my leadership style, are, going to be much more likely to find their way. And so that's why I say it's like, I actually do encourage people to speak to other people who worked with me in the past as part of that. That's certainly what what my boss at JLL did, and that's one thing that really sold me, was he put his network to work, and he had me speak to other people who had worked for him in the past and had gone on to be GCs in other places. And I think as we said before, it's like putting your money where your mouth is. I think you have to put your reputation where your mouth is as well.
Brilliant. Great piece of advice, Tarek. Tarek, let's talk about AI a bit. Uh, how big is currently the team in Magic Leap, the legal team?
How big is our legal team? So so there's one other area that I oversee, which is product regulatory and compliance. It's not anywhere in my title, obviously, but it is another area. So if we're counting, my entire team is about 30 people. Um, I think it's a little more than 30 people. The legal team alone is about 20.
And how are you making your legal team and your entire team more efficient with AI? What tools are you using? Or what are you using? What are you automating? What kind of tasks are you eliminating with AI? How are you becoming more efficient and sharper and leaner?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think so we're doing a number of the things that the other a lot of you'll hear a lot of very similar answers in different companies. There's sort of like automation around templates, playbook management, those just using generative AI for research and things like that. Um, to be honest, I think that there's more work that needs to be done in my current team. I think I made um, it's a significant priority in my last role. Uh, in my current role, because we've been in a period of transition for so long, I wanted to maintain a little bit more stability in the things that we could maintain stability in. And so waiting for all that dust to settle, and then we probably look a lot closer at some of the additional ways that we can improve upon our AI.
Mhm. And when you are using, let's say, when Magic Leap wants to implement AI in the company, how do the general counsel and legal team ensure that the AI is safe for the company and for the users?
Yeah, so it's a fully robust review process. And again, we've actually only green-lighted very limited tools for use within Magic Leap because Magic Leap, despite being a cutting-edge tech company, is also has a lot of really important secrets. And so our business has always depended on maintaining that competitive advantage within the AR space. And so we have to be very careful about what those tools do. Obviously, it's not like it was not controversial like it was 2 years ago when I was first discussing AI use rights, to say that you're not gonna train on our data, like, that's no longer a controversial argument. In the beginning, it was like, "Oh, wow," and I think the foundational providers realized very quickly that that was gonna lose them a lot of business. And but so that's like table stakes. Is like, what's your retention policy? What's your security? How do you train? Where does their data go? Where does it come back? Just learning through the product flow of the utilization to make sure that nothing's being misused. Um, there's of course procurement considerations in terms of cost of licenses and things like that. So it's a cross-functional team. We work with the security team very closely. We review the terms of service very closely, and then we have, of course, our own internal responsible use guidelines, which my team maintains, and you know is the banner by which employees can and cannot use certain tools and how they can use them.
Okay. There was a talk by Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google. He mentioned that they're reducing the number of hires for L3, L4, L5 engineers. Now, L3, L4, L5 engineers are the basic level, introduction level coders, where let's say the L7, L8 engineers are the ones who review the code. Now, the code is being done by AI. A lot of code is done by AI, and there's somebody who review the code. In the future, do you believe we will also stop hiring fresh law graduates because the first draft, the legal research can be done by an AI? We need a seasoned lawyer who can review the work of the AI. Do you feel that the younger lawyers will have issues finding jobs?
Yeah, so I think this is tough to predict at this point. What I would say is, give the example of the statement that was made probably, I don't know, 5 years plus ago, where all radiologists would be obsolete because AI will do a better job than radiologists. And what we found instead is that radiologists still have their jobs. In fact, they get paid more than ever. But it's a question now that radiologists who know how to use AI and know how to use it effectively are paid even more and are more successful than those who don't know how to use AI. And so I think that's probably where this is going to go as well. I get the coding distinction, but a lot of very basic code is you don't really need deep analytical skills to be able to do that. Whereas what you're learning in law school is still deep analytical skills. And so junior attorneys might be slower, they might not be as experienced, but they still have that same ability to analyze. So what I do think is, I think it's probably going to change, and this is just a brash prediction based on nothing, so take it for what it is. But I think it's less likely you're going to have first year associates who can command the kind of salary that the law firms pay them today. I think you're probably going to see more of an apprenticeship model like we've seen abroad, where you're gonna have to spend 2, maybe even 3 years cutting your teeth at a much lower salary in order to get to the level where your expertise matches what's needed to use in conjunction with the tools to make a valuable work product for the clients. But certainly, at least in this short to mid run, what we've seen is that the AI does some of the legwork, but the actual billables are going up, the profits per partner are going up, the rates are going up. And yeah, it's killing me. But I'm gonna have to spend more time negotiating with my firms. But we have to. I, I don't see the model changing in the near term. In the long term, I do see it more of an apprenticeship model, or midterm, maybe more of an apprenticeship model. Maybe in the long run, it's not necessarily that there won't be a need for junior associates, but what junior associates will be doing will likely be very different than what they're doing today.
Mhm. That's a great answer. You mentioned about the profit per partner is increasing. The law firm, I know they're charging 2,000 to 3,000, even $4,000 per hour. Are law firms in the US passing on? Everybody's using it, and most of them using it. Are they passing on the benefit to the client?
Uh, it's a little bit of a loaded question. I guess that the answer is I'm not sure, and I think there's some benefit being passed on in efficiency, um, but because of the rate increases, maybe not as much as you'd expect to see. I think there are some firms I know who are building business models around passing on those efficiencies. So that's going to be very interesting to see. I mean, I recently put out a project to bid, and one firm pitched on the basis of, hey, this is going to be much cheaper because we're going to do this much with AI, but that also comes with, we're not going to do all this other stuff. So in the end, for that project specifically, it didn't make sense to go with that. But that's also because, I mean, so one of the courses I teach is AI in the law, and I know enough to be dangerous around AI, and I know enough how much we can trust it at this point. And so I would say, I mean, don't get me wrong, I think it's terrific, but it's back to what we said before. You really need that human. I like to say not just human in the loop. I think you need human at the helm. So you let the AI do the work, but you supervise it very closely, and the human makes the decisions. And so I would say, um, in that respect, you know, I, I still need a fully robust solution today that has that expertise and that human oversight. But again, the tools are getting better rapidly, and there's no question about that. And there will come a time where the amount of human oversight needed is very small, so that it is only going to be a small increment over it. And then we should expect to see a lot more of that benefit passed through from the firms or from whoever the whatever tools we're using, and then minimize the use of the outside counsel cost.
What keeps you up in the night when it comes to AI, Tariq?
Nothing really. I mean, I love it. Yeah, it's the same as I told you before. I would geek out on, you know, many years ago I was building hardware projects. Today I play with all the different models and I geek out on that stuff and I build my own GPTs and you know, I love it. Nothing's keeping me up. I love to see the progress. I love to keep up with it. I can't wait to see it continue to proliferate.
In the future, in the next 1 2 years, I'm not talking about 5 years because you do not know what's going to happen in 5 years because more AI is moving so fast. In the next 1 2 years, do you think in-house teams will become more and more efficient and you will be outsourcing less work to the outside counsel?
Um, so I generally try and do that on the whole. My view is that outside counsel is for expertise and and they're terrific for that. And but if I had like regular projects that I was going to give to outside counsel, it'd probably very quickly add up to the point where I just hire an in-house resource. So if there's things that, and as I said before, the true knowledge of our products and our business is in-house. Outside counsel will never know our business as well as the people on my team. No matter how many years they work with us, because they just don't sit day to day with our engineers and learn the products in the same way that we do. Uh, so so I think, to answer your question, yes, I think AI is only going to help make the team more efficient and make them able to do even more. I don't know it's going to change what we're using outside counsel for, except to the extent that outside counsel utilizes those tools as well, because I'm only leaning on them for the expertise that what we don't have in house anyway. Um, what I would say is this is again, a lot of people are fearful of AI replacing the job replacement and all this other stuff. Two points there. One, often cited, which is, everyone said that the internet was gonna, like Google search was gonna replace all the jobs. Everyone before that said word processors were gonna replace jobs. And yeah, yes, they replaced the job called typewriter. But they, but it only made so much more volume of work and business capable of being done in each case. And that's what we're seeing with AI now. I would say there are way, way, way more things on my team's desk than we have time to get done. Like so much more. So when we become more efficient, we'll be able to do 30, 40, maybe even 100% more work. There will still be way more work on our desk. And all that will do is cause the business who are also using AI to create more opportunities. So I don't fear job replacement at all. To get back to your previous question, I don't fear it at all. I think if there was something I fear is that we're going to all be so busy and swamped that we're just not going to be able to keep up anymore.
No, no, that's a very good point, actually, Tariq. I never thought about it. Yeah, with the advent of any new technology, whether it's industrial revolution, green revolution, right? The work has always increased because we want to do more because of we are now more equipped. We have more tools, we are more efficient. Yeah, so because human beings we always want to do more, and there'll be always some small layer of people who will always will vanish because of I think m- mediocrity will take more jobs than AI. If you remain mediocre,
That's right.
that's your biggest enemy. Not that's the biggest enemy, not AI. Uh, yes. Uh, let's talk about success a bit, Tariq. What is success for you?
What is success for me? Um, I think success is being able to look myself in the eye or in the mirror and just say, I'm living aligned with my values.
And what are your values?
My values are supporting others. So that's back to that sort of like grow, because I said grow yourself, but I actually pitched to the CEOs to change the name of the value to grow ourselves, and they liked the idea, but then never actually changed it. Those not the last company, right? But so supporting others in growth, continuing to grow myself. And so, I've always, lifetime learning is a key value for me. Um, Standing up with authenticity and integrity. Um, and then, sort of maintaining grit, and then not letting the time of our life go to waste, sort of living a life that allows me to experience in so many different ways and learn so many different things. Yeah. So it's all back bundled in the same areas.
Beautiful, beautiful. That's very powerful. W- Let's talk about money a bit. Where is the money? Is the money in the law firms or in-house?
It can be both. I talked about taking a massive pay cut to go in house. And I think on the whole, people think law firms have the money, in house is not. But I think the money, again, cliche, but the money follows the passion. And it certainly was true for me that as I geeked out more and became, more passionate about my career and drove harder and deeper, people stood up and took notice, and that led to promotions and bigger roles and bigger opportunities. And, I oftentimes tell my students, I mean, this gets back to your very first question about, how do you what do you tell a young lawyer? And I started with saying, do great work. I'll add to that, not just to be cliche, do great work and build relationships. Pretty much every good career opportunity I've ever had, including the ones that I didn't take for one reason or another, um, came to me because of somebody else I'd worked with in the past. Someone who knew me. I didn't get outside of the law firms that I got straight from law school, right? I mean, but I mean, you could argue even that going from one law firm to another was only because I had, done well at one law firm and they were willing to bring me on board when I needed to relocate to the United States. Um, but after that, it was basically referral after referral after referral. Um, And, I'm honored. I'm honored to say that that's been my career experience, that, the jobs I've applied to in the past, those never panned out. It's really hard, especially now. And I was just attending a webinar about AI recruiting and how that's made it almost impossible to stand out, because now everybody can have like pitch perfect resumes, and the AI loves AI written resumes. So it doesn't know, like it does. We're in this loop now. Um, and that's made the need for personal referrals even greater. Um, and so I would say, almost all the, no, almost every good opportunity I've had has been because of a referral. And that's almost invariably because I worked with someone, they enjoyed working together. We did good work together. We enjoyed working together, and they were willing to put my name forward. So I'm humbled and honored by that. But I think that's the real key is do great work, build the relationships. That's the key to career mobility. The money follows going up in the ladder, and then you said law firm, and I think it's the same in both. I think if you're at a law firm and you do crappy work, they're not going to keep you around. If you do good enough work, you'll stay around, but you'll never build a book of business. Like if you build a lot of hours and your work is passable, great. But if you don't build the relationships and you don't have the good the same two things, right? The good work and the good relationships, you're not going to build your own book of business, and your profits are never going to be where everybody else's is, or the partners who are able to do that. And then in house, it's the same. If you might stick around and have a good career, and pay your bills for 30, 40 years, but unless you do great work and build good relationships, you're not going to move up in your career. Most of
And to do great work and to build great relationship to become great first. Uh, and in order to become great, we got to follow all your values which you mentioned, from great to having a great attitude to taking to certain out of comfort zone. I think all those things are very important to become great. When you become great, great things will follow you.
Yep.
Let me So, if I have to go back to your career, let's live apart magically, because, of course, you have a lot of love with the current organization. If I have to talk about one pivotal, very important career inflection point in your career, what would that be and why?
I mean,
The biggest learning you got somewhere, the biggest lesson you learned somewhere, the pivotal point in your career, what was that?
I mean, I'm hesitating because I've had so many that I can like point to that I can say like this was such a watershed moment in my career, and I was so lucky to have this opportunity. Um, I mean, the most obvious answer was leaving the firm to go in house at Motorola. That was just a huge. That's the biggest watershed, and having to learn how to switch that type of practice, and so lucky to have Courtney Welton, then Van Lonkeisen, which is like the longest last name ever, and we used to give her so much grief about that. Um, uh, as my mentor and boss, and she just taught me so much. And it was because her approach to counseling, which no surprise based on mine, was the business relationships. She taught me all these things, and showed me this totally different side of counseling. So I wasn't just lucky to find work that I was interested in and go in house and be part of tech and cool products and all of that stuff, but the fact that I was gifted this great mentor and teacher at the exact same time when I needed it. And I've always been very lucky to have really good bosses. That's something never really had since going in house. I've never had a bad boss, and so I mean, but even not I'm not going to say anything about the law firms again, but I will say prior to I said I had a career before going to law school, and I had bad bosses in that career. So I know the difference between a good and a bad boss, and I've been lucky to have only good bosses in my in-house career. And that just makes a world of difference because it lets you spread your wings in a way that's different, and so and the timing matters as well. Like a boss like Courtney who could really closely supervise and help and teach was really essential then. But fast forward 10 years later, it probably would have driven me nuts because I didn't need that much handholding. And so that, and not saying that she would do that with me, she would probably dynamic enough a leader to change her style depending on that. And I certainly think that's an important, back to your question on leadership values. I treat different employees differently based on what I think they need. And um, but yeah, the key moment was going in-house to Motorola because that's where the trajectory changed.
Mm, mm. If we have to pick up a legacy, and let's say when we leave this world, Tariq, how do you want to be remembered? What legacy you want to leave?
It's not like I haven't thought about it. I'm hesitating now because my views on legacy have changed a lot. I was much more keenly focused on building a legacy when I was younger, weirdly enough. I think a lot of people they start to think about it more as they age, but like for me it was the other way around. I was like, I want to make my mark and be remembered and all this stuff. Don't really think about it that way that much anymore. For now I'm more in line with, as I said earlier, when I look myself in the mirror, am I aligned with my values? Am I living my life in a way that I can be proud of? Am I enjoying the days? It's like the Steve Jobs commencement speech where he says, if you go too many days, you know, unhappy and not living the way you want to live, then something is wrong. And, that you have to sort of always, it's the memento mori. You always have to remember death and say, one day we're not going to be here. And remembering death is one of the most inspiring things to make the best use out of your 24 hours that you have in any given day. And so I'm trying much more to be mindful and live in the present than worry about what can happen after death.
Beautiful, beautiful. That makes complete sense. Tariq, thank you so much for your time today. Really loved our conversation and your answers. So much value that you have given to us, unfiltered, from your heart, with true authenticity. Truly value your time and wisdom here. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this conversation can use this wisdom to decide their career path, choose how to attract bigger roles, get into bigger roles, change their career. Really thank you for sharing your wisdom today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The pleasure has been mine. Thank you.